Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending our meeting today. This is the Homeless Advisory Board meeting for the Coordinated Homeless Response Office. It's brought together by Coos County, North Bend, and Coos Bay. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, being 1:30. And the first thing on our agenda is a roll call. So do you want to start?
Stephanie Kilmer, and I'm with the City of Coos Bay, the City Councilor, and I am an alternate on this committee.
City of North Bend.
Jessica Engelke, City of North Bend.
Andrew Brainer, Director of Homeless Response.
Nicole Rutherford, City of Coos Bay.
David Gill, with Coos County.
Great. The next item on our agenda is to open up for public comments. Oh, sorry. Thank you. It's behind me. It's hard to remember. Councilor Farmer.
This is Drew Farmer, City of Coos Bay.
Thank you. All right. So now we'll move forward to public comments. If anybody has anything they'd want to bring before the board. How about any folks online? Right. So we will move forward to item 3, which is just an update on any ongoing projects. I think we could have a very short discussion on, we have some job openings out there through Cardinal, looking for program manager, project manager, and then also an administrative individual to kind of help through some of the projects we have going on. So anyone who's interested can put their name in the hat with Cardinal. And then I don't know if David, if you wanted to give an update.
Someone asked for permission to record. They may just need a copy of the recording since it's already being recorded. Somebody out of Medford.
I think we are being recorded, yes. Can I get permission to record? Yes, you may, Zach, and thank you for being here today.
A public meeting, and then under the latest court rulings, you don't have to ask for permission, even on one-on-one in person. But public meetings are to give a hybrid option, and the media and the public can always record all public meetings. So appreciate the ask, but not necessary.
Thank
Let's
you.
see if I can move this chair up before I can sit on the floor here. Maybe
He's a former journalist on the board, so he's the master of all things you can get away with.
There's a taller chair here. Thank you. So, yeah. So Madam Chair, to relay to the advisory board that Governor Kotek did announce yesterday funding allocations to help the rural communities throughout Oregon to address homelessness within their communities. And so the announcement was made to state officials, and then each of the local planning groups in the balance of state. So the balance of state, for those listening or on the recording, is 26 counties, rural counties. Our local planning group, if you're looking at us, we are part of the House bill that was created 4123 that created a pilot. And then when the governor's office came out and got approved House Bill 5019, we had asked that our existing pilot be used as the planning group. So once House Bill 5119 was signed by the governor, She had allocated from the state 26.1 million to rehouse at least 450 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness and expand shelter capacity by at least 100 new beds by June 30th of 2025 throughout those 26 counties. So that's spread out. And that, of course, those counties make up the balance of continuum of care. This planning group had made a submission. The state had worked, and we all had participated collaboratively in the funding formula and feedback as to how that would be created. But ultimately, the state made the decision on the funding formulas. We were given a draft number of that amount, but also there was capital money that was set aside. And so we were advised that there was roughly about $6 million of capital that could potentially be used. And so the formula funding is to address rapid rehousing, and then the permanent funding, the capital funding, is for more permanent, which is 24 months or more. The simplest way to get folks to understand that is more permanent housing is where you have a lease in place and you're not wondering where you're going to be next month or the month after or within 6 months. The funding is tied back to specific outcomes. They are making sure that it's all measurable. We, as a local county, were given specific criteria, which I'll relay in a moment. Nicole, the Madam Chair, and I spoke earlier. I will tell you that now I actually went and Googled. So Benton County received 2.4 million. They have to add at least 50 shelter beds and rehouse at least 31 households. Coos County will be receiving 1.9 million and must add at least 8 shelter beds and rehouse at least 32 households. Douglas County got 1.4 million to rehouse at least 34 households. Lynn County got 1.9 million to add at least 30 shelter beds to rehouse at least 32 households. And so what does all that mean? What it means is that within the next week, we will, actually no later than September 18th, we will hear from the state, and we will have a conversation about the funding. And the reason is there's no check yet, there's no contract yet. There was a lot of volume requests, and so this is still a moving, train, boat, whatever you want to call it. It is still moving. And there's a reason for that. I will tell you that in our funding, we've put in 3 capital requests. Initially, our priority 1 and priority 2 requests were removed from the table. In fact, all 3 were removed from the table. We actually were rejected on all capital projects in Coos County. The timing of those rejections was impeccable because 12 hours later, we were at breakfast with the governor. And then afterwards, the governor went and met during the lunch hour with several of the folks and partners in this room. Shortly after the governor's visit, which we went over the rejections, we immediately reached out to stakeholders throughout the state, including the League of Cities, which is our lobbying arm for the pilot. And even the League of Cities was surprised that on the capital side that we were allocated to receive nothing. We continue to full court press as a group. It's a collective effort. We continue to work, make phone calls, lobby, send emails, letters. So there was a revised communication back to our group. And it took our smallest, potential project. And when I say smallest potential project, I have a figure as I recall here. It's a project that had a funding gap of $165,000. It was like the smallest of the small projects. Everything else had gotten rejected. And they asked us to come back and revise our budget by 30%. And at the last meeting, I confessed that after exhausting basically, well, what's that show where you actually had to do a lifeline? You know, what was that? After exhausting everything I had,
Phone a friend.
yeah, something like that. I
And about, do you want $1 million? You want to be a millionaire?
Is that what
Maybe fitting.
So I came last week and I fessed up that I did a Hail Mary. And the Hail Mary was, this is just a slap in the face. All of the partners have been working so aggressively together. There is money, and Coos County has been in a state of distress for way too long. People are suffering, people are in great angst, and they want to see something happen. And nothing's been happening. And so instead of revising our budget down another 30%, I went and revised the spreadsheet and submitted it with the full budget. And when I say full budget, we were very transparent in our submittal who all of our partners were, who was coming to the table. For instance, like Advanced Health. And that we weren't asking for full freight. We were only asking for absolutely what we needed. And so for us to take a 30% haircut, which I could probably use one, that would put us another 50,000 in the hole. And the money just doesn't grow on trees. And so we revised it. I did technical consulting with the state. I explained as our representative what was happening and where we are. Submitted the spreadsheet by the deadline, but then I submitted with it a sort of a passionate letter that I edited 7 different times. And then finally just hit send and said, I got a week until I have to fess up to what I just did. And so, so that's what I did. And so that was last week's. That was, yeah, I admitted that last week, but we submitted what, 2 weeks ago? As we all talked about this, we were all frustrated. I get it. We are, as collaborative, we're frustrated. And we kept telling folks, keep the faith, keep your chin up, because everyone was working so collectively. I mean, I have to believe that everyone who interacted with the governor during her visit paid huge dividends. I've been here 3 years. It's the first time that I've seen face-to-face governor here in Coos County, which, you know, we're the 2nd largest city. You know, you've been here quite some time, you know, and so that matters. And so, so here is what we are told. That project that I just mentioned for the gap of 165,000. Well, that's off the table and they get funded. But let's go back to our number 1 priority project. And this is where I don't know a lot. So the letter that's now come in from the state, and I'll read it, says, thank you for your partnership as we work toward achieving the balanced state goals associated with House Bill 5019 funding. And it is just that, it's a partnership. Everybody helped in fact, even a former Coos Bay city manager, Roger Craddock, helped in on this. The team has been just that, and then our partners have helped with this. So it is just that, a partnership. It says, as a result of the volume of requests for resources, so you do the math, if there's 26 counties, we're like, well, you gotta at least get 1 million, right? You gotta. Well, not really. OHCS, which is the state agency, the Oregon Housing and Community Services, was not able to fulfill the full amount of the top selected project. That was our number one priority. So that immediately told me that number 3 is off the table. We're back to number 1, which was like, whew, you know, hallelujah, because it tells you that our governance is working. It says the Coal Bank Village project through the Devereaux Center at a partial amount of $642,020.36 is the funding amount. So if there was roughly, and again, until we see the numbers from everyone from the state, if there's about 6 million at play, that's 10% plus of those funds. Given this decision, we request a planning meeting with you to discuss available options to ensure this project can be successful. At the end of the day, we know what our initial project request cost, and so we've got work to do to figure out how the gap funding is going to occur. We recognize that your strategies may shift in order to accommodate the amount of funding available. Well, I guess they don't know Coos County. We're going to stick to our number 1 priority. And I feel very confident that that's the direction of this body. In an effort to be responsive to community feedback about the pressing needs for more shelters, OHCS has increased the total amount of funding allocated towards shelter funds. So you're like, oh, right, wow. So that 6 million potentially went up, right? This adjustment subsequently reduced formula funding for rapid rehousing to compensate for this additional need for shelter. Now, we sort of kind of heard that those 30% cuts might actually do that. And so, so again, you just stay even, you keep reading. It says below is the funding amount you will receive for your local planning group's community plan and approved shelter addendum. So we have our community plan, which we worked with all of our partners on to create. And then we have our shelter addendum, which was our capital projects. So the Coos County House Bill 4123 group, which is North Bend, Coos Bay, and Coos County, the formula funding is $1,285,798.53. Initially, that figure, so it got cut a little. So that initial figure, bear with me, but I think I have it right at my fingertips. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yes, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Was $1,462,380.23. So we went, however, for disclosure, there was in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, $219,357.04 for state administration. Okay. Well, of course. So I look at it as we're kind of ahead. And then the shelter funding for the Devereaux Center is the $642,020.36 for a grand total of 1 million. I always like how the state rounds when they send the emails, but they did. Ours is $1,927,818.89. They just don't round up. Your final goals, so our responsibility for our pilot is to collectively rehouse 32 households. That's working with all of our partners. Rehouse 32 households and create 8 new shelter beds by June 30th, 2025. And again, they said, we are looking forward to meeting with you for the planning meeting to ensure that the partial funding offered can be utilized to create new shelter beds. I've now understood that they're going to do that with everyone who got funded under the capital side, because apparently others made commitments. We haven't made commitments yet. We did our due diligence, but we made no commitments. Some counties apparently made commitments that said, if then else. We did. And so what that means is that if another entity can't meet their obligation, I believe from this, I can infer, I don't want to say assume, I'm going to infer that there could be some potential redistribution. That could be on the positive side. I also know that nothing happens until the planning meeting happens. And then once they're comfortable, then we will be given a contract, which will go through the review process. And then that contract ultimately will have to go to our fiscal agent, the county, for signature. So that's what I know, and I'm glad to answer any questions that I can.
Okay. I guess the first thing I would ask is what's the timeline we think they will be doing the planning meetings?
They will contact me no later than Monday.
Okay.
So I'll know by then when the planning meeting will occur.
And the goal is that September 18th distribution point.
That is they want to make sure that after we talk with everyone that's on the list, you apparently have the master list. How many got funded out of the 26? I don't have
Just a
that.
moment.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. There was the governor's office did a press release yesterday, so 1, 2, 3, 4,
She got that,
5,
I
6,
did.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of the counties. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 counties in one group, so that would get us to 19, and then 3 in another. So that gets us to 21 of the 26.
Yeah, and so, so they're definitely going to want to make sure that they can move forward. It's almost like, if I need to go down and buy that lollipop and they've only given me, $3, and I gotta come up with $2 more. Some may not be able to come up with $2. And so we've got to figure, and I believe that there are pathways, and we'll continue to pursue them through grant opportunities.
And just for perspective, it looks like the smallest award was 594,000, and then the largest is 3.8 million. So we're in the middle, a higher
It's a
side.
good place to be, because like I said, on shelter funding, we went from 0 to 642,000, which I got to commend this group. It's been a lot of hard work, but y'all didn't falter, didn't yield, and so it's paid off.
Well, has there been because we came at this from the pilot, so the 4123, which was organized under the county's kind of umbrella because of the way the bill came out, that it was structured to go through the counties. Is that the intention with this, that it would still run in that same path?
My understandings are the contracts will be with the county. I have no clue how they're going to do the multi-county. I don't know if they're going to run that through the ROC. They could run all this from the ROC, the regional organization of continuing care. And so we'll find out on our planning meeting. And so again, I'm not going to assume. I've learned not to do that with these things. Just keep asking questions.
I'm on the ROC's board and I haven't heard anything about a distribution mechanism yet, so.
Yeah, so far because of the administrative dollars, the question is like, is it going to be out of the state? Who knows? But we should hear, because like I said, the decisions were only made yesterday, or the announcements were made yesterday. And so, we'll find out, but I have nothing else I can add on that question.
So certainly, 640,000 for a shelter is certainly better than 160,000, if that's true. But it's also considerably short of what we had, allocated in terms of a private project, right?
Correct.
Which was probably twice as much as that.
3.2 was the initial, I
How
think,
much was it?
3.2.
3.2, so.
We have acquisition and potentially rehabilitation to.
Yeah, this particular phase one. I mean, all in was $3,545,000. Acquisition was $1,995,000. Renovations, $1,100,000. Moving costs, $100,000. Additional shelters, $350,000. And so, there are federal grant opportunities and other mechanisms that can help with this gap. We've already had some initial phone calls, and we'll aggressively pursue those. We have a grant writer that's engaged. So we have time because we have until June of 2025 to realize our goals. And so, that doesn't mean that you do nothing, because there's the formula funding side of it, which is the rapid rehousing.
Don't
worry, you educating
yourself or?
No, I was asking, I'd like to ask a question if I could.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I just would add before we, I'm hopeful and we're all on the same page, but when we have that planning meeting, you know, we re-solidify this project is a $3.5 million project. And if there is a reallocation of any sorts, we need some dollars to get closer to that gap.
Well, I think that was
But I
my
suspect
thought.
everyone may have the same request.
I think that was my thought, is the discussion of, if we are at the planning meeting, what is our stance? Is that, are we going to, we want to stick with our primary goal and try to allocate it, can towards making that happen? You know, and again, I don't know if they've already decided which project, maybe that's where we are, but you know, it's still quite a significant amount of money to try to raise. With you know, again, with probably many other communities probably in the same hunt. So that is potentially problematic.
But the cool thing about it is not undoable. It is very possible. As I say, we've already engaged and had some phone calls at the state level, and then to some federal arms. And so there is a pathway to make up the gap funding. Will we need some assistance from some of our other partners who also have other tentacles into other state federal funding? Absolutely. But I do see this as a doable project. Just for those, because I know I keep talking about rapid rehousing, and so there's 32 households that have to be rehoused. So in the state's definition, the state has made it clear to us that they are not necessarily following the strict definition of rapid rehousing. They're actually characterizing it as a permanent housing intervention. That means an individual family has a lease or sublease agreement in their own name. Rapid rehousing allowable costs may include things like landlord incentives to secure available units, block leasing strategies, rental assistance commitments, paying for damages, or supportive housing services for households that are rehoused to ensure that they are able to stay securely housed. The goal is to get folks off the street.
So they've also denied our funding requests for the construction of permanent housing projects in the area as well, haven't they? They shot down Banker, a couple others, so they're providing funds for rapid rehousing, permanent housing, but they've denied the funds to build the housing. So my concern, and I think one of the points where we can poke at the state with, is that when we're looking at rehousing people, when there is no additional housing, the reality of what we're talking about is just shuffling who's housed and who's homeless. I think we kind of saw that on the mental health side in the past. We would see somebody lose housing and we'd be able to put a client there, but the net gain was never present. All they're talking about is showing the numbers without improvement.
Yeah, and I guess part of that is I'm gonna agree to disagree, at an interesting level. You're talking about, obviously, and you know, it's the lift money,
Yeah.
so these are tax credits. And so, you know, the state's gonna take on the debt. And so when you see where the money went for all their projects, they made, this latest round really went to the hardest hit areas of the state that were decimated by the fires.
Yeah.
Wildflowers. Wildfires.
Close.
And so,
Flower supper.
you know, and so, you also look at the fact that the new executive director of the Housing Authority, came in sort of late to the game, picked it up as fast as he could and ran with it. But he's gotten a lot of guidance and a lot of feedback. And so there were a lot of wraparound potential services with that. And
I've
so.
not heard they changed the OHCS director.
Local.
Local,
Oh,
okay, here,
Okay.
Matt. And so I look at it as, well, this is an opportunity. They've given us very good feedback. We attempted, of course, collaboratively, we participated in the appeal, but the reality is there wasn't additional money. You're going out and basically incurring the debt at the state level in order to do the tax credits, in order to fund the housing. And so very much like the container ship project, there's 5, you know, bites at that apple. The port's at bite number 2, and so they've just submitted. And so I wouldn't characterize this as sort of a shuffling, because it allows us to collectively work and find housing. For instance, this was interesting because this is a question that came out of this group. It says, do RV parks count? The state said yes, with some habitability. How's that word? See, what was your word?
Electrification.
Okay, so this is habitability. What is that word?
Habitability.
Habitability.
Yeah, see, I told you to start words I can't say. Habitability.
Just a better word.
Why? Okay, so whatever, requirement, see, there's one of those words. The other word used to be dividend, used to not be able to say dividend. Anyway, and so, they said, the question was, do RVs in good repair, hooked up to sewer and water, and on at least a month-to-month lease or owned land qualify as permanent housing? The state came back and said, if the household is not seeking traditional permanent housing and their housing preference is an RV, it can be counted towards permanent housing. Permanent housing for an RV should include a livable, good condition, hooked up to sewer, water, electricity, and at least month-to-month lease or owned land. Please be sure to check on any local habitable structure codes and blah, 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 which of course would be, you know, you don't have an unpermitted.
Yeah.
And so this is why Portland got in the RV business, because they solved some of the definition stuff in the state. They're like, well, we can, you know, set up, and so they did. They got into the RV camp business and set one up.
Interesting, you could actually turn that into a tiny home project as well, because some of the numbers, the key for the RV isn't that it's an RV, it's that it has a PIN number. You can make tiny villages as well using that.
So,
Things like-
yes, funny you should say that, because another question that came, and so that y'all know, so when it's like another question, so we have an executive group, and then we have the full body. Stephanie is the alternate to Coos Bay, so if one of their 2 members aren't here, Stephanie fills in, or vice versa. And so the executive, we meet every single week. And so there's 3 of us. It's myself, it's Nicole, and it's David Gills from the Coos Health and Wellness. And so that's why if you hear me say, well, one of the questions, I don't want you to think that any member has been asleep at the wheel. There's a lot of operational work going on in between, and then we come together to make decisions. So back to that question, thanks. One of the questions that came up during our discussion, which we took the state, was do accessory dwellings units count? Because what we wanted to know is, could we put a small home, by the way, we're not allowed to call them tiny homes. In Oregon, they have different codes, so they're small homes, and they can't be beyond 500 square feet. Which is actually a pretty nice home. We've looked at several. We've been looking at them in North Bend. So it says, yes, accessory dwelling units can count as eligible housing types for rapid rehousing. While acquisition development costs are not allowable, covering connection fees is a method to incentivize owners of the ADU allowable. And so in exploring some of the other communities in the state, we have found communities that have found ADUs, and they said, fast track these. Here are the plans. If you want to come down to City Hall, you fill out a little permit thing, they give you a copy of the plans, you go have your ADU built. Under the most recent state law that took effect come July 1st, those ADUs have to be connected to water, sewer, power utilities, the utilities on site. So they can't just have a TED shed. I shouldn't say that because it's probably copyright.
So a pallet would not.
Not unless it actually has facilities, but there are pallet shelters that actually have entire units. They have little mini kitchenettes. In fact, I think I saw some from the Salvation Army at a recent meeting that they showed us. And then there's also another company. So yes, there is multiple types of ADUs that could be on a property, whether we put it on church property, a private owner wants to put them on, or someone wants to put them in their backyard. The question that I had that was raised today during a call, which has to come full circle, is if the ADU follows all that, is it now eligible for a housing voucher? And that's the question that I raised this morning during yet another one of these meetings. So I don't have that answer. But so far I've been able to answer everything you shot at me. Thanks to all the questions that have been raised from the team. Because and I'll tell you some of the other things. For instance, if you house someone, is rent required? They said no. The executive order funds can cover all or partial rent. So if someone's not able to pay, what if rent's not consistently charged? For instance, cost is stabilized by owning agency. It says subsidized rent is also eligible approach or use of funding. We asked about do host homes count? I think that was when AYA was at the table. It says yes, this is an allowable use of funds. However, there are a lot of different ways to implement this approach depending on the population. We would request more information about the strategy that's deployed. The mayor and I learned, for instance, how many folks are host homes for students. And once they get to a certain age, they can fill out a form and actually like go be in a host home. We also learned through AYA that they're housing roughly about 50, was it, give or take? Is that number correct?
I think so.
They actually have folks in host homes, and that was news to me when we had that meeting. Do mobile homes count? Yes. Do manufactured homes count? Yes. So we have a lot of opportunities. And so I think that once we get past the planning session, once we get a contract and get it through the county, I think that the counties will continue the technical assistance and be able to ask questions through the executive order team, because obviously, you know, if they're taking a cut, they're going to provide services and answer our questions. So all in all, Madam Chair, I see this as positive news, and I'll yield back to you.
Great. Just one other question. I don't know if this has been asked, but is the state looking at all at revising some of the ordinances or laws relating to nonprofits or churches, for example, that put a pallet home on it? We've had one in Coos Bay, where you're saying that they do have some of the capabilities to have sewer and water. If the state still only they have a restricted limit to 3 on some of those properties, and churches and some of the nonprofits may have large amounts of property that be available for something like that.
So I'm gonna say this hypothetically. So hypothetically, if, let's say, North Bend had an ordinance and it restricted a church to 3 pallet homes, it would be in violation of state federal. From the court side. And the, right now, the state has offered a lot of technical assistance opportunities and grants. In fact, I know Coos Bay is working on some, North Bend is, I suspect maybe in the county, and are pursuing the technical assistance grants so that you can look at your housing codes and get them revised. There's a lot of things that occurred regarding housing. This didn't come with just, you know, here's some ice cream. They're like, here's the cone, but you gotta mold the cone, and that's local. So they didn't reach into our backyards and say, you gotta change all these codes. What they've said is, we have loosened certain parameters, but you've got to review them. And so the technical assistance is there if you want to engage and get the grant to revise those codes and sort of decide in your community what makes sense in Coos Bay or North Bend or the county or elsewhere. And so does that answer?
I have a question here, because I was gonna ask Counselor Kilmer, what she's referring to is, state would trump the local laws
Depends.
on the ordinances.
Yeah.
State
So-
law used to restrict to 3. It might have got lost in the fold, but
Yeah.
in 21 through House Bill 2006, they removed that
Yeah.
3 limit.
What did they
restriction
change
on
it to?
churches. I think they just rescinded it entirely.
They rescinded
Oh,
it
okay.
because they were making policy on church land.
Yeah,
And
it didn't go well.
Well, there is that separation of church and
Yeah.
state. Somehow or another, someone missed that.
In the 90s, it had been.
You know, it happens. It's just like, you know, some of the camping ordinances, you know, were done back in the 60s and they just been on the books.
So basically, it's back in our,
It's back in your court to develop your code and review your housing code. In fact, I know, we were at a meeting at the port, so I know Coos Bay is working on extensive review of all your code. We are reviewing selective code, and we're aggressively going after the technical assistance as well. Because, for instance, like right now, you know, having an RV on your property and just, you know, very quietly hush hush renting it out, that's a violation of code. No one goes looking for you, it's complaint based. Well, we want to be able to get you to the point where, you know, as long as there's not a fire safety health issue, that we can enable some things. But it has to be what the community wants. And each community is different. The reason I say that is someone, you know, may not want RVs in their backyard, and that neighborhood or community may say no. And so those are just dialogues to have. I know we floated and I floated in North Bend the small house concept, because when we tear down the visitor information center, there is the potential to put some small homes there. The reason we floated that is because I got to figure out, you know, what does my council think? Well, the council says come back with a concept plan. That's as far as they've gone. That's fine. We put together. So that's why I've looked at a lot of these 500 square foot properties. The reason behind that is that, you know, you look at folks from starter home. Well, what's a starter home now? I mean, you know, we just came to the chamber and they're like, hey, we're building these for what did he say, $170 a square foot or something like that? You know, can't
I
afford that.
apologize, I missed it, Chuck. Has Andrew had a chance to give his report yet? We're at 15 minutes remaining.
at the meeting,
It's scheduled till 2:30, right?
Yes. He has not.
I just
how
checked.
long is your report?
I can make it quick. Everything's okay. Good thing. I'm good.
So back, I'll finish that thing. So the reason is, and then, if folks, can't, move out of their house and downsize to something, well, then you can't help the housing issue. So, when we did the housing needs, study, very much like everyone has, we've been required to, you have to look at how to, meet the needs, whether it's senior housing, initial, entry level, whether it's apartments, single family, all of that. And so that's why we're looking, because we need an even spread. Right now, we saw there's less than 1,000 square foot home that you now can rent, and it was $2,300. It's just it's just the reality.
Plus first in the house.
Oh gosh, yeah, and I don't even know where you're gonna go with that money. So thank you.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I always like to, I feel like our role on this advisory board is to take the information out also back to the community and try to help them understand and explain this. And I know Mr. Miller gave a lot of numbers that can be like really, it's very complicated for people to understand. So I always like to try to do, like, in my mind, like the Cliff Note version of what I would be saying to the community members who are like, so what just happened? And so if I were able to like say this back out to somebody, and they're like, okay, so what was that announcement? Correct me if I'm wrong here, because I want to make sure that I would be able to get this. That, that when the governor came into office, there was, these initiatives to rehousing, rapid rehousing, and to, get people off the streets. And that the counties, we were asked to submit capital requests. And so our initial ask, and I'm just going to use kind of close-ish numbers, when we put together those asks, it was about $3.5 million.
So there's two pots, and let's be very, very careful. So so step back. You may recall, for instance, Commissioner John Sweet, who had worked with the county commission on trying to gather data and go after declaring a state of emergency and getting emergency funds. That's because the executive orders that had initially came out left out all of us down on Coast, down in the rural. And so the governor issued her executive order, and that executive order enabled, it was executive order 23-02. Yes. And so that was balance of state. There was a formula funding, and so they created a formula, and all of the planning groups in the 26 counties decided, are they going at it alone or are they going at it with other counties? In addition to that, there was roughly, we were told, 6 million allocated on the shelter side, the capital side. So there was the formula funding to take care of rehousing households. And then there was the shelter side, which was get heads in beds, get these shelter beds out there. Go back to what we're all dealing with. If we don't have shelters in our community, we can't enforce, the camping ordinance. So it's all tied together. All of this is like a spider web. And so, so the announcement that came out yesterday was twofold. The formula funding for balance of state, and then the shelter funding.
Okay.
And Nicole's going to send a copy of the press release to Andrew, who will then forward it out to all of us. And then the news media is going to do a great job and explain all of this in the world newspaper.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's going to be breaking news with big, beautiful photos.
And again, the highlights of the Cliff Notes, the good news is we went from being rejected from everything
Yes.
to all hands on deck, lobby, advocating, sitting down with the governor, to getting probably close to 1.9
Yes,
million.
but rejected for shelter funding.
Shelter
We
funding.
were never shut out for the formula funding,
Okay,
but we knew that was a moving target. So it's the shelter funding that we were shut out. And it's like, well, and this goes to Drew's thing. Well, if I give you some money to go like buy a car and the car lot's empty, how many cars am I gonna buy?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a mechanism to get shelters, why give me the money in the first place? And so collectively, not to confuse the two, but rehousing households and then creating shelters, and are two different things going on. And the 32 households is the rapid rehousing portion of it. And so, yes, and so we believe we can accomplish the task within that timetable, which is June 30th of 2025. A lot of numbers there. A lot of, does that make?
Yeah, I was
good?
trying to think of a distinct way to be able to.
Yes, yeah, we never got shut out, and we worked with all of the condominium trying to figure out, you know, what are the needs, what do they have, everything. There were more projects, even locally, than could be funded. But we as a group knew that we needed basically, I think the verbiage from us was shovel ready. We needed shovel ready projects that we knew we could act on. The others still, you know, we're still in the, oh, I was about to use a pregnancy analogy. Yeah, they were still in the planning phase. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, whether they say like bun or something, or I don't know. I don't have kids. I don't know.
Yeah, I think perhaps we're ready for Andrew's report.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's bun in the oven, isn't that it? Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I would say since there might be some advisory members that need to leave, get through the meeting, and then we can.
Yeah, we can certainly have some questions afterwards, just because there's some, timelines.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, David, on the board and everybody's hard work on this project, and I'm looking forward to seeing the future, what happens here in Coos County. Here's a little recap of August since our last monthly meeting. I met with Commissioner Taylor in his office and regarding of different planning, maybe opportunities for the county to look at forest land to actually maybe have a somewhat of a camping ordinance, different forest lands that could be contributed by the county. From that meeting, I was able to speak with a couple of our board members, and there was an ordinance that was comparison to the city of Coos Bay. And then the last county commissioner meeting, I was able to have a few minutes to talk about the project and then give back the response back to the county commissioners and the staff there. Also, with our strategic plan, I've had a few presentations. I did one with the local Rotary group of Coos Bay and North Bend, and continue monthly pilot meetings. And then I went to a lot of different seminars that kind of tie in with the homeless crisis. There was it was called a Tall Cop seminar that was located at the Mill Casino, and there was a gentleman from Texas that gave reports of the current drug use problems that we are having across the country and what's coming on. And one of the biggest things I took out of that was it's now affecting our kids in schools, going up to even to second grade now. And it's a concern that I have and a lot of people have as well. It's an informational meeting that just kind of shows you like what's going on and what we need to be prepared for. I also did some trainings with bylaws, with state laws. I had a recent one on Zoom. I'm actually attending one with former city manager Roger Craddock on Monday in Gold Beach regarding those. I've met with the Salvation Army regarding projects that are taking a look at right now, maybe potential small homes, I'll use that terminology now, and looking at that. Like I said, I attended the Coos County meeting and met with commissioners, and long-term next meeting they like me to will have a little bit more time for me to speak on certain things I'm currently working on. I also did a presentation with our local Kiwanis group regarding our strategic planning, and they had some high interest as well moving on forward. This past Monday, I attended one of our local nonprofits, the ARC Project. And the ARC Project is an agency that currently works with both North Bend and Coos Bay school districts with our homeless and homeless families. So that's a really great project that's going on. They're always looking for funding. One of the biggest things that they're dealing with right now is transportation. For example, each month that they're not able to provide transportation. If a family doesn't have a actual address within Coos Bay North Bend, it's very hard to work with the local school bus companies. And so they have developed a program for that to occur with through AYA. But sometimes that takes time to get that scheduled. So they're actually having to work with Yellow Cab Services, which gets pricey, and looking at the fees of over $500 a month, which adds up. And there's just a lot of kids that need help. And so they've asked me to talk with one of our local services, which is part of our strategic plan with transportation and CCAT, to see if they can help out and maybe look at current, maybe CCAT stops local for the Coos Bay North Bend School District, which would be a great idea. So I had an enjoyable talk with them, got to know about them, about the families. So for example, if there's a family struggling, they actually have a kitchen there. They can actually prepare the food for the family at that location. They have showering services, they have laundry services there. It's just a great program for both school districts. I attended my first Coos leadership meeting. Coos leadership is regarding of knowing what's going on with our local businesses, our governments, and our different cultures. It's very successful yesterday. And continuing on looking, as Nicole had said, we are looking for a project manager and administrative assistant. With those roles, I'm currently taking some schooling classes, thanks to Save North Bend, for providing some classes I can take online. There's 6 of them to continue my schooling, so I can become a really positive director for our future staff members and for our community. We are continually meeting with our faith-based organizations, which I appreciate. A couple of people are here today as well for that, and looking at different ways. Our churches, especially, I think it was really renounced the Power Five. Some of our churches that continue to work to help with our homeless crisis. And they have some projects coming along that actually ties in with both a lot of our primary services within our area, and we're continuing to build from there. With our primary care, it's been very successful. I appreciate David Gills again for his expertise in the field. We're continuing working with that primary care group and especially tomorrow as well. And then with the other group that we're meeting with is with our tribes and our veterans and the city government officials. We have some plannings on working towards maybe an actual project that will help out our law enforcement and long-term with a peer support specialist on the field to contribute so they're able to go to other emergencies as well. So like I said, I got a lot of training classes coming up. I'm continually doing presentations within our local governments and moving forward. So thank you for your time.
All right. That's if any board members have any comments, that's the next item on our agenda. Anybody?
I'm still working on my mental health thing. Had a meeting with the commissioner out of Multnomah County yesterday, Commissioner Merriman. Been working with Lane County, RDA, and Sheriff, and taking a somewhat less diplomatic approach towards suing the state over the state hospitals so that we can get more mental health intakes and capacity there. So the commissioner out of Multnomah County is very interested in going to push on her colleagues to see if they can spearhead it. Legal at Lane County is interested in signing on as a party. The League of Oregon Cities Association of Counties and City County Insurance are all interested in signing on amicus, as is our county. So getting closer.
For another party into the lawsuits, I think there's already.
Going for OHA in the state, because the state hospital uses the must when order isn't out. Well, they're doing everything they can, but the state is not that nice.
Are you on the civil commitment work group?
Yeah.
All right, that's part of that work.
No, this is just me being entertaining.
we're still working on, sort of this is not part of this group, but we are still working with the same partners on the Bangor School project, so. I think we're hoping to sort of, hopefully we'll just roll the efforts that we've had into the next cycle, we can maybe learn some lessons from our previous applications. And obviously though, there's a delay, and we had hoped that we would start building this next year, and funding applications in January and hearing in July, we're going to be, I say delayed, but I think all the partners are still there, so hopefully we'll have more success this. Hopefully third time is a charm.
Yeah, so we hear, that's the answer. Yeah.
I was gonna say thank you to the executive team of this board. You carried a very big, heavy lift on the operational side of filling out the applications and the forms and working with securing the hopefully upcoming awarding the funding. So I appreciate that. It's very duly noted that you also have other demanding full-time jobs. So I know that this probably consumes you for several weeks, and I appreciate it.
And I want to echo the fact of, so, we are the House Bill 4123. We're the face of that. When we have the meetings, Andrew's out there on a regular basis. We knew from the get-go when we started this, the thing back when we actually started. In fact, I just saw the photo of us holding up the letter with Representative Boomer Wright saying, we're hopeful to move forward on this pilot. At that time, if you recall, it was 2 million. And it was 5 pilots, and then it became 8 pilots and $1 million apiece. And so we just took it in stride and said, we're going to figure this out because we know we're going to need additional funding. And I'm very, very proud of what this group has accomplished so far. The strategic plan is in place. It's being implemented. We have secured the grant writer. We're working on the administrative staff positions so that we can continue to further the initiatives with capacity to do more. We soon, I have it on my calendar, we will have our annual report due in a not too distant future to the state to showcase our accomplishments. Very proud where we are. It was a horse race. Coos Bay's been out there among the front runners. We're not the front runner. I'm not going to tell you it's different, but we're up there. And so the work's paying off because we always knew we couldn't do it with $1 million. We had to hold up the office, and we've been very, very good stewards of that money. And so, and we wanted to ladder that money to make more money in order to help folks in the community. And it's strategic partners that have come forward. Even in our submittal, when you look, you just heard Dr. Gills, talk about the Bangor School. Those are strategic partners providing wraparound services so that we can address a community need. And, we know folks get beat up on a regular basis because you're trying to do what's good in the community. And I will tell you, continue to do the good. And they can fall in line and help where they see fit, or they can stay on the sidelines and continue to peck away. It won't matter. We're not going to back off on the initiative to take care of folks that are in our community. Nobody likes the fact that we got these unfunded mandates, but the reality is it's there, and we're going to address it. And quite frankly, we may be the only ones saying we're doing a dang good job, and that's okay. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I do want to, and that's a perfect segue to what I was going to say. I appreciate the effort of the executive and this whole body and what you're doing in the community. If there was a magic bullet to solve this crisis, we would have already done it. I feel like I'm preaching to a lot of the choir in this room, but we do hear the negativity out there. And I'm just going to use the word. The folks that think that this crisis will just stop if we just stop providing services. That's just not realistic in any way, shape, or form. And the folks in this room that are working on that, this body understands that we have to work toward a solution. It's a huge, it's a elephant problem, and the only way to tackle it is one step at a time. And fortunately, this group got together, put in and made this happen so that we could start tackling some of those problems, those issues that we're having. It's not gonna just go away if everything disappears. And we have to do something, or we will continue to step over the bodies that are on the streets and the sidewalks. And so I just appreciate what you're doing and all that hard work and the heavy lifting that you had to do to get to the point where you were able to share some really positive news.
Couldn't done without this team, that's for sure. The cold notes firsthand. Be in between meetings, back and forth, and same thing, I mean, poor Dr. Jones, he joined late in the game and rolled up his sleeves. It's like, I know what I'm in for, but buckle up, I'm along for the ride, and he has been. And so we certainly appreciate everyone at this table and the team. And upward and onward, I think there's great things to come.
All right, I understand there are some questions. There are some folks who are gonna probably need to leave. So what we'll do is adjourn the meeting, and then we certainly can answer any questions that you guys might have.
As long as we don't have a forum issue, but we'll be good.
Yeah. I actually have a 3 o'clock, so
Okay.
yeah.
I just figured we'd leave it.